A new national report has found that 90% of Ireland's EU protected habitats are in poor condition, with over half continuing to decline. The assessment, published every 6 years under the EU Habitats Directive, highlights major pressures from agriculture, drainage, pollution and invasive species. But there is some good news though. Over half of protected species are in favourable condition, with otters, bats, many plants and even whale populations showing stability or improvement. Conservation efforts such as bog restoration and the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan are also making a real impact, and these findings will now help guide Ireland's biodiversity and nature restoration plans in the years ahead. To talk about this in more detail, I'm joined on the line by Ray Foghlú, of course, Hometree's Engagement and Education Officer. Good to chat with you again, Ray. Thanks for being with us.
How are you, Alan? Good to hear from you.
When you hear that 90% of our EU protected habitats are in an unfavourable condition, from your own perspective at Hometree, what does that mean on the ground?
First and foremost, it's not surprising from what we see. I would acknowledge the state has started to take the issue more seriously, but as some of the commentary from ministers and the people in the PWS said in the report, this is a big ship to turn around. So even though they have made steps in the right direction, the nature is still ultimately on a negative trajectory. I think the last round found that 85% of habitats were in an unfavourable status, and this time it's 90%. So I think that in a broad view of this, Alan, we have to consider this isn't an abstract challenge. You know, it's nature over there. I frame this really as a kind of an existential challenge. Nature provides so much of what we take for granted: the air we breathe, the water, the soil that produces our food. So we aren't separate to nature here, so we should really take reports like this quite seriously.
Yeah, and why do you think, though, Ireland is performing so poorly on habitats, Ray, while doing relatively well on species? 58% of our species listed as favourable.
It's an interesting question. I mean, some of those species, you know, things like the pine marten, for example, has benefited from afforestation, which has in its own way caused challenges for other species like maybe hen harrier or curlew, but it has provided more habitat for woodland creatures like pine martens. Marine mammals, I think, is a really interesting one because it should give us all hope, because there was intention behind it. We collectively as humans decided, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago that we wanted to protect these. We didn't want to keep killing them for food or oil or whatever. So we made that decision. Now, we made it because, look, we were able to get oil and perhaps food from other places, but nonetheless, we made that decision and we're now reaping the benefits. I suppose habitats are trickier, Alan. It's a much bigger picture challenge. We live in a democracy. There's like people privately own land, and you can't force them to do things. You got to incentivize them to do things. And look, I would say that sometimes the incentives, there's been mixed messages. We're paying you for the environment, but we're also kind of paying you to produce food. And there is opportunity to do both, undoubtedly. But I think we do need to give clarity to landowners about what the priority on a given piece of land is. Some land really lends itself to high quality, not intensive but efficient food production, and other land can be used to produce food, but it also as a co-benefit can produce, you know, species rich grassland or habitat for ground nesting birds or clean water or whatever. So it's just about clarity there, you know.
Yeah, and I'm kind of keen to find out about that, engagement with landowners. Another finding in the report is that over 2/3 of habitat pressures are linked to agriculture. Obviously, at Hometree, you have a lot of experience engaging with communities and farmers. Do you suggest practical changes that could make a big difference to them? Are they quite receptive to that? Do they understand the need to protect our habitats and our wildlife and balance that with still being able, I suppose, to do what they do in terms of agriculture and so on?
I think this is all such new stuff, you know. For years, farmers, were no more than foresters, and we're told produce, you know. It's all about maximising output, and all the schemes, all the incentives, everything was geared towards that. And then, 10, 15 years ago, And sorry, that idea of produce, that didn't come around in the last 100 years. That's thousands of years old. We're just trying to produce enough food to feed the people, in the world. So that's like a long-standing mentality. I've probably said the phrase before, another year, another sow, another acre under the plough. It's continuous improvement, efficiency. And now we've said, yeah, we still want you to, produce, but we also want you to do 5 other things relating to nature and water quality. And these are new things, and they take a while to embed. I might just say, Alan, before because I'm interested in maybe saying what I think some of the next steps could be or should be, but I think it's useful for listeners to maybe have a sense of what's actually driving like declines on the habitats, if you think that's interesting.
Yeah, no, we would love to, yeah, because I mean you've more experience and knowledge of that than we do. So what do you think are kind of some of the driving factors behind the situation we find ourselves in as that we see in this report?
Yeah, so certainly, I see farmers as both, the drivers of habitat loss, but also really the best placed group to be the saviours of this situation. They are closest to the land, they know the land the best, but undoubtedly land intensification. That means, removing old grassland or scrub and putting in monocultures of grass, draining land, which allows a load of nutrients or sediment to go into our rivers. Intensification of our uplands with woodlands, spruce woodlands. Well, look, we need, again, just like we need food, we need timber, but it does have effects on our habitats and nature. I think a big one is abandonment. Farmers walking away from pieces of land. Sometimes intensifying land is bad, but also walking away from it is bad. Some species, particularly these ground nesting bird species, they need that Goldilocks, not too intensive, not abandoned, So I think a big challenge is invasive species, things like rhododendron. You see it out around Aina, like just huge areas falling under species that shouldn't be here really at all. Species like Sika deer, like massive issue for our woodlands, just grazing everything out. I think the last one, I'm actually up in the hill here between Doolin and Lahinch, and I'm looking down at Liscannor Bay. Every summer now, Alan, you probably see it, like Spanish Point, White Strand, Lahinch, the beaches are closed again and again. As soon as they start testing the water, the beaches get closed, and it's because of essentially bacteria that's running into the river. But it's from agricultural slurry, and it's from poorly managed wastewater treatment. So these are all from our septic tanks or hotels or operations run by the local authority or whatever. So these are all our key challenges. This is what's it's no one single thing. It's like nature's being affected by death by 1,000 cuts here.
The EU Nature Restoration Regulation is going to require us to restore degraded ecosystems at scale, Ray. Do you see it presenting challenges but also opportunities as it becomes law and practice?
I do. I think there is a good opportunity, but we've made so many mistakes in terms of how we engage with farmers and communities around the environment and nature. Back in the 90s when the Habitats Directive came in, many farmers in the West woke up one morning and saw an artificial line drawn around parts of their farm and said, that's a protected area and you can't do X, Y, and Z in there. And that really damaged trust, actually, because farmers said, I'm up for doing the right thing, but I don't even know what I'm supposed to be protecting in there. And also, if I am to protect it, I'd like maybe some support. And ultimately, in my view, that support never came. So first and foremost, the nature restoration law is an opportunity to kind of do right by farmers and by broader communities. And so for me, the first step in that is engagement, like meaningful engagement, not box ticking, meaningful engagement. We went around the country recently as part of a engagement process called Community Conversations Around Nature. And what we found is there's a lot of sadness and loss about the loss of nature, but there's also a real reservoir of goodwill to do the right thing on the part of farmers and on the part of broader communities. That's an opportunity I think we should tap into. I was thinking, what could it look like to really do that? The SEAI were set up around sustainable energy. They're a whole body to help people like me and you and businesses and everyone else improve their energy efficiency. Could we have something like that for nature, that people are like, I'd like to do the right thing, can tap into a network? So the biodiversity officers in the local authorities, that's a great step, but there's one of them in most local authorities. They need a full team. They need a full team. So that's the first thing I'd say, is engage properly with people and farmers. The second thing is, Alan, more money. We need more money. I was thinking the bill or the annual cost of the HSE is 25 billion a year, right? The National Parks and Wildlife Service, even though it's got a lot more money recently, gets 100 million. That's complete. Like, nature, the environment is our ultimate health service. It's our life support machine. We need to fund it properly, and that funding needs to go to farmers, to the MPWS itself, and to communities who want to do the right thing.
Okay, look,
It's not all about funding. We need enforcement as well. Like, I see it all around the place in West Clare, habitat destruction. And there's no consequence still, Alan. I would say that. I just have to be honest about it. Slurry shot in over a ditch, and I've reported it, and nothing's happened. So we need that enforcement piece. The last thing I'd say is, state agencies like Quilcha and Bord na Móna, they own 8-9% of our land, right? There's a huge opportunity there, but often they're not managing it well. There's invasive species everywhere on the land, or it's being inappropriately used for commercial forestry when it's maybe needed by species like the hen harrier. We need reform of those agencies. Now, things have started to happen. Bord na Móna actually, incredibly, last year did 4,000 hectares of peatland restoration. You probably saw it in the figures that peatlands have actually made a small improvement to blanket bog. 4,000 hectares a year, that's the kind of ambition our state agencies need around nature restoration.
Okay, well, look, hopefully, Ray, the next time we're speaking to you, there's more investment from central government, more enforcement and more coordination. Thanks for joining us once again, and I hope you and everyone else at Hometree has a great Christmas, and we'll speak to you in the new year. Thanks very much, Ray.
Mighty Alan, thanks a million for that.